Shalom everyone and welcome back. In this video, we'll be going through the laws of punishment. All of those penalties for breaking the commandments, penalties that once stood prior to the promise of mercy and grace. Jeremiah 31 verse 31 says, "Behold, the days come, says the Most High, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke, although I was a husband unto them, says the Most High. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Most High, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more." Here's a prophecy that a time would come when those who follow after him won't have to be convinced to keep his commandments. Those commandments and the desire to keep them shall be on their hearts. He says he will put his law in their inward parts. He didn't say he would get rid of his law, but he intends to forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more. That's mercy, and that's grace in spite of sin, in spite of disobedience. And this is how he intends to get into the hearts of man, by forgiveness, a perpetual forgiveness. This is how he plans for his will to be in your heart. He's saying, if I forgive you for what you've fallen short of doing, will you obey me? And many of us accidentally thought his forgiveness was him erasing his standards, but he wants those standards in your inward parts. Then he intends to offer you perpetual forgiveness. And now today, because of that forgiveness, the punishment that was once due to us is no longer a part of his law. So when you hear people, including myself, say the part of the law that was done away with is not the entire law, but the part that addressed punishment and death, these are the laws that we're talking about. These are those laws that are no longer in place because of the sacrifice of the Son, the lamb on the stake that atoned for the sins of the nation. These punishments are no longer in place. This was the purpose of the Son, to atone for the sins of the nation, to usher in that promise of Jeremiah 31:31. I go more into this in my videos on the book of Romans and the Messiah, to follow or not to follow. But in this video, we will go over those punishment laws that we are no longer subjected to. The first establishment in this section was the establishment of a court system of trusted individuals who could determine guilt or innocence. In laws number 540 through 544, we see the commands to appoint judges who are familiar with the laws, to decide by majority when there's a disagreement, and that majority must be of at least two. In Law 544 is the command that a judge who presents an acquittal cannot later argue for conviction. In today's legal system, that's considered double jeopardy. Once you claim someone innocent, you cannot go back to try and convict them again. There are various ways to carry out the death penalty. Laws 545 through 549 tells of the various methods: stoning, burning, by the sword, strangulation, and hanging. Deuteronomy 21 verse 22 says the penalty, particularly for blasphemy or idolatry, was stoning and then hanging. Per law number 550 and 551, those who were executed must be buried the same day and not be left overnight. Per law number 552, sorcerers were definitely executed, doers of witchcraft and magic. Law 553 through 554 introduces yet another method of punishment, lashes to the wrongdoer, but no more than the prescribed number. So this does sound harsh, but looking at today's court systems, death penalty is legal in many states for heinous crimes. Just instead of all of these disturbing variations of it, now there's just one or two, lethal injection being the primary method, at least in the U.S. But there are rules governing the judicial system. Law number 555, the court must not kill anybody on circumstantial evidence, Exodus 23:7. Law 556, the court must not punish anybody who was forced to do a crime, Deuteronomy 22:26. And there are also laws to ensure the judges do what they are supposed to do, all emotions aside. Law 557, a judge must not pity the murderer or assaulter at a trial, Deuteronomy 19:13. Law number 558, a judge must not have mercy on the poor man at the trial, Leviticus 19:15. Law 559, a judge must not respect the great man at the trial, Leviticus 19:15. So no matter if the criminal is poor, the judge is not to pity him. If the criminal is rich, he should not be able to buy his way out of a conviction. That happens a lot today. Mercy is shown to celebrities who commit crimes that the normal person gets locked up for. Law number 560, a judge must not decide unjustly the case of a habitual transgressor, Exodus 23:6. So even if someone has committed the crime a number of times in the past, the judge is to treat this crime justly, rather than go back to their previous crimes and try to reconvict them for those again. Law number 561, a judge must not pervert justice, Leviticus 19:15. Law 562, a judge must not pervert a case involving a convert or an orphan, Deuteronomy 24:17. Law number 563, judge righteously, Leviticus 19:15. Law number 564, the judge must not fear a violent man in judgment, Deuteronomy 1:17. In other words, don't be intimidated by the person on trial and allow them to detour the conviction. Law number 565, judges must not accept bribes, Exodus 23:8. Law number 566, judges must not accept testimony unless both parties are present, Exodus 23:1. And there were also laws demanding respect for the judge or the leaders of the nation. Law number 567, not to curse judges, Exodus 22:27. Law number 568, not to curse the head of state or leader of the Sanhedrin, Exodus 22:27. And law number 569, not to curse any upstanding Jew, Leviticus 19, verse 14. And there are laws to respect the judicial system and its process. Law number 570, anybody who knows evidence must testify in court, Leviticus 5, verse 1. Law number 571, to carefully interrogate the witness, Deuteronomy 13:15. Law number 572, a witness must not serve as a judge in capital crimes, Deuteronomy 19:17, and this is in order to prevent conflict of interest. Law number 573, not to accept testimony from a lone witness, Deuteronomy 19:15. Law 574, transgressors must not testify, Exodus 23, verse 1, simply because they are not trustworthy enough. Law number 575, relatives of the litigants must not testify, Deuteronomy 24, verse 16, again, conflict of interest. Law number 576, not to testify falsely, Exodus 20:13. And law number 577, to punish the false witness as they tried to punish the defendant, Deuteronomy 19, verse 19. And there are laws to protect the system against any insurgents. Insurgents is just a fancy word for a revolutionary or someone who rebels against the system. So the Black Panthers during the Civil Rights era are a perfect example of insurgents. They rose up against the authority of an unjust legal system. Insurgents has a negative connotation to it, but there are times when a group of insurgents fight against a just legal system, and there are times when a group, like the Black Panthers, fight against an unjust legal system. So an insurgent is a group or individual that goes against the grain of the system for whatever reason. So the following laws are for any insurgents that may arise. Law number 578, to act according to the ruling of the Sanhedrin, Deuteronomy 17:11. Law 579, not to deviate from the word of the Sanhedrin, Deuteronomy 17:11. Law 580, not to add to the Torah commandments or their oral explanations, Deuteronomy 13:1. And law number 581, not to diminish from the Torah any commandments in whole or in part, Deuteronomy 13:1. So anyone who does this is considered an insurgent. Those who took it upon themselves to add to the laws or take away from them for any reason, religious or political or otherwise, is considered an insurgent to the commandments. Again, my purpose in this series is to remove the false additions that have been added. So if we're commanded not to add to the commandments, Israel, we're in turn commanded to filter out what has been added in order to return it back to what it should be. And then we have some laws addressing the treatment of your parents in this section as well. Law number 582, not to curse your father and mother, Exodus 21:17. Law number 583, not to strike your father and mother, Exodus 21:15. Law 584, to respect your father and mother, Exodus 20, verse 12. Law 585, to fear your father and your mother, Leviticus 19:3. And Law 586, not to be a rebellious son, Deuteronomy 21, verse 18. So looking at the laws of mourning, law number 587, to mourn your relatives, Leviticus 10:19. So we're talking about a funeral now. We're commanded to mourn our relatives. We don't need to be told that though. Law number 588, the high priest must not defile himself for any relative, Leviticus 21:11. So it's very important for a high priest, when in mourning, not to defile himself in the process. How might he do that? Law number 589, the high priest must not enter under the same roof as a corpse, Leviticus 21:11. So they can mourn their loved ones, but they cannot be near the dead body. This will defile them. Law number 590, a Kohen must not defile himself for anyone except a relative, Leviticus 21:11. When it comes to the Levite, if it be a relative, they may defile themselves by attending the funeral. So we're seeing the difference between a Levitical priest from the line of Aaron and a Levitical high priest who was never to defile themselves, even for family, by being in the same room with the body. So there are a number of laws here that can no longer be kept, including these ones regarding the high priest and the Levitical priest. And as for the judicial system we talked about, remember, there are two legal systems at work here. The head of the nation of Israel, called the Sanhedrin, or the elders, or the leaders of the nation, and the legal system of the state and federal government under which we live. The Most High has forgiven us for the disobedience of his commands, but the state and the feds have their own commands that apply to all races, all nations, all religions residing within their borders. So we're focusing only on the laws of the Torah and the penalty laws of stoning and burning and hanging that are no longer kept today. This doesn't mean the government will forgive you for breaking its laws. Completely different system at work. And the death penalty is still in effect in their legal system, in the states where it is legal. And their system is a system I'm sure you are all obeying. What's interesting is while we want to throw away the Most High's laws, we know better than to throw away the laws of the government. Which reminds me of a prophecy in Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. It says, we will be scattered from one end of the earth to another, and there we will be made to serve other gods. Not just religiously, but politically. We care more about obeying the government than obeying the Most High. That's not to say disobey the state law for the sake of your covenant, but certainly do not disown your covenant because you live among other nations, scattered in another place. And don't let anyone tell you that because you're scattered or because our people have been disobedient in the past, we are no longer his chosen, or we no longer have a covenant with him. Going back to Jeremiah 31, it says in verse 35, thus says the Most High, which gives the sun for light by day and the moon and stars for light by night, which divides the sea when the waves roar. If those ordinances depart from before me, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. If heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, says the Most High. There is nothing that will separate us from his love, no matter what our people have done and are doing. He says the seed of Israel, that's us, will cease from being a nation before him only when the sun stops shining in the day, and the moon and the stars stop shining in the night. When heaven can be measured and the underground searched, only then will he cast off the seed of Israel. So let's thank him today for his forgiveness towards our disobedience and his patience as we get up and proceed to learn his commands, and thank him for his willingness to receive us in spite of our ignorance and in spite of our flaws. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. 590 laws. That's a lot. I commend you guys for sticking with me. Just a few more laws to go before we can say we've studied all of the laws of the Torah. So hang in there for the conclusion of this series. We've gone through 590 laws, 19 of which must be omitted because they were false additions, 42 laws that need to be changed to fit their scriptural reference, and 239 laws that can no longer be kept today. Again, thank you guys for joining me. Until next time, this is Judiah. Shalom.